Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today is a big day. It's a big day for folks in the United States of America because today is the day that we elect our next president. So I know that many of us, myself included, will be glued to the voting updates throughout the night. And but before I get too much into what today's video is going to be about, as if you couldn't guess, I wanted to touch base on the Halloween reading I did with the little cute tin, the Halloween tarot. And one of the questions I asked, because I hadn't been in the know, I wanted to know like what kind of costumes my grandchildren will be wearing, and hopefully I'd see, at least two of them, because two of them only live like 2.5 miles away. The third baby lives a little bit further, and it's not as convenient to just see each other as much as I do with my son's two children. But anyway, I pulled 3 cards, one for each child, and I specified when I pulled each card who it could be for. But when I pulled the first card, which was the 10 of Pumpkins, I had asked that, when I turned the card over, I said, this one will be for the eldest child, who was a 4-year-old girl. But as soon as I saw this, this was her brother, who kind of, it looks in this image, kind of is reminiscent of the boy in, what's the name? The wild one, or I think it's, I forget what it's called exactly, but what I'm talking about. And we call him the Wild One, and the theme of his first birthday party was the Wild One. So as soon as I saw this, I thought, oh, that's her brother, and he'll be the Wild One. Now, as it turned out, when we were invited to go see them a few minutes before they left for trick-or-treating, so we ran over there to see them. And he ended up, they had a chicken costume, like really cute chicken costume. But as it turned out, we're in southern New Jersey here. It was 80 degrees on Halloween. So 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not exactly sure what that would be over, in Celsius. But suffice it to say that a furry chicken suit was really, really hot, and they had to take him out of it. So he just ended up in regular clothes, his like regular little t-shirt, maybe that said trick or treat or something like that. So, then that makes me think, well, I was off because I was looking for visual clues, right? But, here he is smacking like a pumpkin to destroy it. And so that could be a clue that, he wasn't going to be able to wear the same costume, like something changed, But I don't know. I think I'm grasping there. If this one was a bust. He was wearing a chicken suit, and they took it off of him because he was too hot. The next one ended up being the Empress. And I figured if this one was the her little brother, then this one would be her. And I was like, absolutely, she's going to be some kind of princess or queen, right? Now, the interesting thing is when we saw her, we asked her, oh my gosh, what are you? Well, we could tell right away she was a princess, but her answer was, I'm the princess unicorn. So that's what she was. And if you look at this picture, doesn't that thing sort of look like a horn? If I was really in tune, I would have picked up on that. I would have said she's going to be a unicorn. But as it turns out, I thought she was going to be some kind of princess, which she was. And so this card really nails the two things. She's she's an empress here, but if we understand that she's a little girl of royalty, right? So she's the princess, and she called herself the Princess Unicorn. So there's the horn, so it's kind of funny. And then for the third baby, she's 3, I asked what's she going to be, and this one's really uncanny in much the same way that this one is. I just said, okay, she's going to be a little ghost, and I pointed out the little cat with wings, flying above, and the 2, little ghosts. Well, as it turns out, she was literally Zero, like the little dog ghost from The Nightmare Before Christmas. So she was a ghost, but she, if this could be seen as like a spirit animal or whatever, I thought that was also very interesting. So the one that just didn't gel it just didn't gel, was this one that I interpreted to be the wild one, or a reference to the wild one. Now, another reason why today is really important, besides that it being election day, is this is I guess the 8th anniversary of my mother's death. We always say, remember the 5th of November, we stole from Poe. And, you know, it's still with me. I, of course, was with my mother when she died, and I was with her for, I guess, at least 2 weeks, a week, 2 weeks before her passing. And because we knew it was the end, and so I stayed with her, you know, until the end. But at any rate, up until the day she lost her consciousness, she didn't, you know, she lost consciousness a few days before she died. But I swear she still communicated. It was weird. It was weird. So she must have been in some kind of, I guess, some kind of like morphine coma. I think that was probably part of it. But, and I had people coming over because I thought, you know, I had heard, you know, once you hear the death rattle, then you know. And so there was one night, and I heard it. And then in the morning, I didn't hear it. So I was terrified to go in there because I was by myself, you know. And I don't know why I would have been terrified. I just didn't want to be alone when I saw when I found my mother deceased, which is what I had imagined. And I think I told my daughter, and she lived locally at that time, and because my mother lived in Pennsylvania, and at that time my daughter did. And my daughter was there for me, and she spent the day with me, but she wasn't, my mother hadn't deceased. My mother had not died. So, but we knew it was close. And so I called everybody, and I was just like, today I think is the day. And my mother was surrounded by, like the day before her children were there. I had the cousins, I had some of the neighbors. I just had people that knew my mother. We alerted them that this was it. And they spent the day. They spent the day with my mother. It was amazing. We were all in a little bedroom with her big furniture, one piece of which I've mentioned here, I have here. And they told stories, and they talked about, and, you know, and there were times when it looked like she laughed. I mean, it was really weird. It was really weird. And then that night, you know, I was holding her hand. Of course, she was in, I guess, a coma, you know, as I mentioned. And I said, yeah, you wouldn't believe it, Ma. There were so many people here. Both of my husbands were here because, of course, I was married and divorced. And, you know, the father of my children was close to the family, and we remained close, you know. And so I said, both of my husbands were here because then I had remarried, of course, and had John. And she laughed. Her eyes were closed, and she was like, and I was like, I knew she heard me. I knew she heard me, and I knew when I said that if she was conscious, that she would like really appreciate that, and she did. So I can't explain it, but my mother was with me. She was with me. She was there, you know, even if, and I think she was aware of all those people that were there, you know. But then the next day, she took a real turn, and that was really the day she died, and but it took all day. It was like not until like 7:30 in the evening, 7:20 in the evening, that she actually passed away. It was something like that. But I had all the kids there. I had my sister there, and my one brother was there. And we sat vigil. We sat vigil with her until she died. Okay, why did I tell you all this? I'm sorry. I'm just kind of reliving the moment, I guess. But up until she lost consciousness, I got distracted. When her caregivers came, you know, and I had hired professional nurses, you know, to come in to tend to her a few times a day because I wasn't physically able to do the things, but I participated. I participated every single time a nurse came in. I was there with my mother and participated in doing the things that they needed to do. But, I still hired them because I wanted to make sure she had the best care. And right up until the end, all she could talk about was the darn election 8 years ago. She was terrified that the man whose name shall not be mentioned, that he was even in the running. And at that time, we were all, oh, God, Ma, don't be ridiculous, There's no way America is there's no way that there's so many Americans who are that unenlightened, And she died. I was left alone in the home with my brother, my one brother, but he's not like a real comfort. He's I've mentioned him many times. He's special. He's special. So he was in his room watching whatever, and some comedy, and I stayed with him for a few weeks because now he had no one and he was a special needs adult. So I stayed with him, and then I brought him home with me, and then for like 3 weeks, and then he went to my sister's, and so we were very mindful of this brother, However, on on election night, which was 2 nights later, he was gone. He was in another room, and it was exciting in the beginning. It looked like she had momentum, right? And then by the end of the night, when I went to bed, I knew, and I couldn't believe it, And then, of course, I was listening then in my mind to everything my mother said that I wasn't paying attention to because we never thought that could happen. Now, I guess, sometimes in your gut, you think something is so awful that it can't happen, and so you sort of block it from happening in your mind. That may have been something that I could have done because I do block things, But I started thinking of things she was saying, and she was old enough to have been alive during World War II. She knew what sacrifice meant, she knew, she and my father were from the silent generation, raised by the greatest generation, and before my generation, which were, was boomers, but they are really like this, they were the silent generation. They kept quiet, I think, but at any rate, she remembered things, and she said, this is like it was, this is how Hitler got started. Now, she didn't say he was Hitler or that he was going to be as bad as Hitler, but what she said was, this was how Hitler started, And, my mom, of course, was the mother of a disabled child, And so when she saw his imitation of a disabled adult male, aside from the fact that she had already known that he was a buffoon, that abhorred her, and then it made her remember, the things that she remembered from another evil person who managed to con enough people into believing his brand. And I sat there in disbelief that night when I saw him probably win. And I sat in my mother's bedroom. I just sat in her bedroom. And boy, it was, I said that, if had my mother been alive, that would have killed her. would have killed her, man. So, and then, up until that point, like hearing all the things she was saying, and then it all, like, really, we dodged the bullet, with Biden. He was the right man at the right time, and I've got nothing against what he's accomplished, but this monster has resurfaced, and I'm taken back to when my mother was, when my mother died, and then this whole thing happening again, and just, and then he came back, with 34 felonies and all the other associations and affirmed corruption. This man is being put before the American public for a second time. And I'm asking myself, the thing that I consoled myself with the first time is that there aren't enough like Americans that are like that off, to have any, of the ones, who voted for him first to the two times. Could there really be any of them left enough to cause trouble? And so that's what's bringing me here again today. And I'll throw a few cards from a few decks, and we'll all sit with bated breath this evening. One deck that I'm going to use is the one J.J. Swiss tarot deck, and the reason I'm using it is because it's a Besson sonnet. Now, it's not an early Besson sonnet, but it's a refined, later, I think 1830s. I think the last video I said it was from the 1870s, but the last video I mentioned this deck in, but I think it was really somewhere in the 1830s. Because it's got Juno and Jupiter instead of the female pope and the pope. So it has, it took a political stand. So it's, it's a Besson song that, a deck that took a physical, that took a stand. And, or the town of Besançon, who made the deck, popularized the style of deck. And so I'm going to go with that. It's a deck that I've had the longest, and for those reasons, that it's a political deck, but it's also the first deck I ever owned. So it's so I'm putting it to this deck of cards. I'm not, okay, that's a misnomer, and it's just language that I use carelessly, but it's incorrect. I don't consult the cards. I interpret the cards. When I go off, when I go to my meditative place, I give everything I have to that idea, and I release it to the universe as I handle the cards. That I am asking for permission to see and understand what I'm seeing, to give a meaningful interpretation. But it just becomes easier to say when I consulted the cards, but that's not really what I'm doing. I'm interpreting the cards. One of the things I say to people if I do have, the occasional sit-down readings is that, I'm not a mind reader. I interpret tarot cards. If I was a mind reader, I'd be living differently. I'm intuitive, I guess. I'm a lot of things, but guessing the lottery is not one of them. Guessing the lottery numbers is not one of them. All right, any rate, I'm rambling. Of course, the question is, what will the results of this evening be? What will be the reason? Now, we may not know. Okay, here's another thought. We may not know for a couple of days because this is going to be so contentious that I'm just hoping that, it's resolved or not even entertained. So I'm not going to say what will be the result of the election. I'm just going to ask what will be the result of, by the end of this evening, what will be the understanding. Now, I did go off into my meditative place and I, spoke of those, the questions that I have to answer. Anyway, let's just see. I picked 2 cards. My apologies. Well, they would have both been on the plate. All right, so we have 8 of Cups, which I think showed up in another reading that I did with this little deck, if you recall. Wow. So the 8 of Cups, Now, in this deck, it was a Rider-Waite-Smith image of somebody who has their back turned and is walking away, if you recall. Oh my God. You know what? I think the devil showed up in that spread too. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, this one's different. I was getting freaked out. I was freaking myself out. Okay, well, we have, if I don't recall the 8 of Cups from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which was the other deck that I used, the Rider-Waite-Smith type, then when you see the 8 Cups, when I do, pip style cards, it's not like somebody walking away or somebody disgraced and walking away or somebody in defeat. This is number 8 is a number of order, lack of chaos. And the Cups is hopeful because it's like lack of emotional chaos. But then it's like followed by the Devil card, and we have somebody who's in mourning or in regret. So we have a lack of chaos. We have order followed by the Devil. And then 3 batons. Now 3 batons. I think there was a woman. So it was either the female pope or the empress that fell in that. Well, I'm probably maybe I'm confusing a few readings that I did because I did a few readings. But it's uncanny, the associations that I'm making with these cards. But at any rate, order, chaos, some evil thing, deep regret, and then growth, right? If we look at the 3rd triumph card, it would be the Empress. But with batons, social growth. So it may be. It may be like a good stable win, for the heart, for the spirit or the emotions. There can be chaos, but ultimately there will be growth in the spirit, social direction. I'm going to use a deck that makes me think of my mom. Now, this deck doesn't remind me of my mother because she was alive or ever saw it, but because I've only had it for a couple of years. But I like this deck. It connects me to my mother because when I pulled, and of course they're not in any kind of order, but when I pulled the Strength card, it tied me in with my mother big time. And here it is. It was the Strength card. And it made me remember a medallion that my mother made for me when I was like a teenager, preteen. And of the lion. And of course they're not the same, but oh my God, like that took me right to this and the connection to my mother. So at any rate, I'm going to, if my mother is available, when I go into my meditative place, I don't know if my mother is available. My mother may have been put in another place. She may have been reincarnated, right? I mean, just because we want to connect with someone who passed on doesn't mean that we can, because even if they were willing, their essence may no longer be available. And so this is another important thing that I discuss when I go into my meditative place, is that, it's not necessary that I, speak to my mother or the loved one or whatever, or that I tap into them, but the essence of them, the essence that the universe possesses of them as we knew them here. Please allow me to see a message from her or them, depending on who, is asking for whom, right? What would the essence of them do or say or want me to know? What would my mother, want me to know regarding this issue and how things play out tonight? What does my mother want me to know? So I'm going to go off into my meditative place because I hadn't really properly shuffled these cards. I just want to make sure I get it in the right order. Right side up and in the spot where it came out of. So let me go to my meditative place with that thought. Alrighty. To answer that question, Page of Wands, a young person, a fun person, could be, one of my grandchildren or the, young people in general. A queen of the same suit, family. Oh my goodness, all of the same. Come on now, let me look, because I definitely shuffled this deck. Yeah, I really did a good job with this deck. Wow. So a family with the queen front and center. So I think it's hopeful that we have the queen front and center and not a king, right? So we have the power of this woman, aided by the young people, perhaps, is, if I'm trying to understand a projected meaning of what I asked what my mother, what I need to know about this evening, So it looks like a woman is victorious and she got young people, to assist her. That she got people to assist her. We have a knight who does, who's chivalrous to the queen and maybe runs errands for her or helps her out or, that kind of thing, as well as to the king. And then we have a valet or a page who assists the knight. So, yeah, young people may, if you're a young person, please vote. Oh, please vote. Oh, God, please vote. So this is a little cryptic, but it's hopeful. And it's interesting because these, and I didn't pull a quint card for this, but we can just to see. But if you notice in this spread, there would be no quint cards. So, and I don't count them because, I only count pip cards. Now, if you didn't want to abide by that, that's your business, and nobody's saying it's wrong. If you wanted to, give a point value, then the pages would be like 11, knights would be 12, queens would be 13, and then a king would be 14. But if it's not a pip card or a triumph card that has numeric value, I just don't add it up, But in not adding it up, we're left with 0. So let me pull a full card for this, for here, and then let me pull the quint card for up there. Well, this doesn't make me feel good. So, he's like, this is a wild card. It's a wild card, so it may not be as smooth as we think. This is a wild card, so it could be it could be a wild night. But I think the focus is on this, which is very interesting. Okay, so now we have 8 and 15, I think would be 23. I'm no mathematician. My things are slipping for me with counting numbers anymore. So please be kind. So I think I said that would be 23, and 23 and 3 would be 26. So 26 minus 22 would be 4. So that, let me pull the emperor. Oh, God. So we have conflicting reads, I think, in both sets, right? Because here it seems pretty plain and clear who won and how she won, but then the quint card is chaos, or well, I'm reading this deck. I'm interpreting this deck. I'm not going with like the fool always being chaos, but in this deck, he's a court jester. He's a trickster. So I'm interpreting this particular deck. Okay. So I when I read a deck, I tend to interpret it for itself, So, that's the feeling I get with this particular fool in this particular deck. So it's unsettling, right? And then here we have steady, order, maintained, or order, and then we have, in the context of the question, chaos, regret, something bad. But by the end of the night, there would be growth or social growth. So by the end of the night, maybe it was a little more hopeful. Oh, but then this card, the Emperor, because not all emperors are benevolent. So the end of the evening may belong to chaos or bad acting, bad behavior. We may not know, when I began this reading, I said we may not know the results because it may be days. Depending on how petty or how spiteful the loser may be, they may be counting votes for weeks, So I'm fully prepared maybe not to know who the winner is. And in both counts, it looks like it's really hopeful and that it's really, feeling good, right? But then at the end, for both reads, we're presented with, in this case, possibility for trick, right? And then here we have who I identify as a bad actor, either dominating the scene dominating the scene in some way. So it may be that despite what is perceived to be a win, in my perspective, I would consider to be a win, but expect to be upstaged, or to expect trouble, maybe. Yeah, expect trouble. Ooh. But let's not end there. Let's end on a good note. And let's have some fun with the deck, okay? And I'm going to use the Ehrenberg Tarot, what I just referenced in the other readings that I did earlier. Okay, I thought of something fun. Since today is special connection to my mother, and the election, I can't think of going through this evening without her being present with me, because basically I sat with her 8 years ago, having many conversations, and listening to her, not fully understanding until later exactly what she was meaning, and she was aware. She understood the trend because she'd lived with it before. And at any rate, if there's one thing I just want to ask, I'm going to ask this deck that I can kind of connect with my mom for the strength card, which I've spoken about in length in previous videos. But at any rate, if there's one thing that my mom wants to tell me about anything, what would that be? That'll be my question. I'll go into my place. I'll reverse the camera. So this is just in fun. If my mom had the ability to say anything to me, what would she want me to know? Now, I'll put a lot of credit in the first card that comes out, but I'll still continue with the other cards. But I think I'm going to pay most careful attention to the first card that pops out. So, three batons. For me, if I read this deck, keep learning, keep growing. Remember, this is, kind of based on Rider-Waite Smith, and we can almost project the rest of the picture. That's, we can imagine it, right? There are differences, however, even just because the deck is based on another deck, that doesn't mean that there aren't differences, Anyway, we have three batons. Then we have, another three. Three of what would be considered pentacles, but I like to think of as coins. So growth, in well-being, continue learning, continue taking care of yourself, and enjoy life. Enjoy life. Absolutely. Okay. So keep growing personally. Keep growing, and keep learning, and just enjoy life. Wow. All right. Well, let's do a quick, just to see. 3 and 3 is 6. 6 and 19 would be 25. 25 minus 22 is 3. So that would be the Empress. Let me pull her. And I've been saying, keep growing and learning and that kind of thing. And then this, if you read the deck, still, speaks on fertility for this particular deck, right? So I take care of my health, stay on top of it with my health, and keep growing, keep learning, and have fun. Wow. Yeah. I can see you saying that, Mom. That's a nice message. All right, friends, until next time, peace, stay well, be kind, and do no harm.